the planet works. In the ideal world, we would all live in places that aren't affected by natural hazards. We wouldn't live near coastlines. We wouldn't live along the San Andreas Fault in California. We wouldn't live underneath the volcanoes in the Pacific Northwest. But we live where our homes are. The museum is presenting this exhibit to describe these events to people so they have a better understanding of earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, hurricanes, and tornadoes. But more than that, to begin thinking about the risks associated with them. As climate warms, we expect there to be more severe storms, more severe droughts, more wildfires, and to some extent, over the last decade, we've seen just that. There's no way we're going to avoid the natural hazards on a dynamic Earth, but there are certainly ways that we can learn to live with it, to mitigate the risks to society.
The 1964 earthquake that occurred in Alaska happened on March 27th. It was at 5:30 p.m. There was over 4 minutes of shaking. It was the biggest that the United States has ever seen. When we're looking at an earthquake, we really want to know what the impact area is. So what area is going to be impacted, what area is going to have the highest shaking intensity, because that is really going to show us where the largest damages are. Responding to and preparing for disasters. We also do a lot of mitigation work, which is the group
it's erupting now. To a geologist, there are a couple different definitions, and one of them is simply that it's been active in the last 10,000 years, that there's been an eruption. At Yellowstone, there hasn't been an eruption of magma in the last 10,000 years, but we see so many other indications that show that the system is alive, it's breathing, and there's fire below that could again come to the surface in the future. Scientists have become quite successful at predicting on a short-term level whether a volcano is going to erupt or not. The most likely things that we'll see is some significant ground deformation, where the ground is moving significantly upward. We'd also combine
the region which is of primary concern for the generation of a local tsunami is the Cascadia subduction zone, which would include the states of Washington, Oregon, and the northern part of California. We have never recorded instrumentally a larger earthquake in that part of the world. The reason is that seismology is very young science. We have had instruments only for 100 years, but we have several ways of assessing the seismic potential. One of them is geological fieldwork.
I first came out here in the spring of 1986. At that point, the very idea of very big earthquakes here was controversial, to say the least, among our scientists. Very few believed that they could happen here, and nobody had demonstrated that they had happened here. So,
coming again! Big one. Back up!
It took me a couple of months to even begin to remove myself from the horror of the Sumatra event and to begin to understand we would learn from that event, and that would help us avoid such death and destruction from future events. The most common and best known cause for big tsunamis are cases where the sudden movement of the seafloor is generated during an earthquake. The biggest earthquakes on the planet happen along subduction zones, where the ocean floor is going down beneath the continent. When there is a sudden motion of the fault, it pushes the water, and that's what generates the tsunami waves.